we want to stand up, we can do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Roll call. Mr. Conley,
Excused. He called in and said he can't make it tonight.
Mr. Hoag is here. Mr. Burlington.
He's got his cell phone. He's out of the country.
How? Mr. Marty?
Work emergency.
Ms. Shandell. And Ms. Rose.
Here.
And Mr. Nixon is here. And we have Ms. Darla, our city manager, Mr. Moore, our planner, and Ms. Johnson. And we need a motion to approve the minutes from January 7th, 2025.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes from last meeting? Seeing there's none. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Tonight, or we need to approve our agenda tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve our agenda. I'll support it.
Any discussion? All approve, signify with aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay. Public comments, see nobody in here. Anybody online? Anybody that is online, if you would like to raise your hand for public comments, now is the time. Okay, we will close public comments. Conflicts of interest and ex parte communications. Anybody have anything to discuss? No? Okay, tonight scheduled public hearings. I don't believe we have any of those. Site plan reviews. Don't believe we have any of those. We're on 10A, master plan. The future land use maps and narrative, is that you, Ms. Darla, or Mr. Moore?
Right. So, we talked about next step in the process for developing the master plan. We developed goals and objectives in November and December. So what you have in front of you is a future land use map and a future land use narrative. So this is basically what kind of makes up the future land use plan. And so this looks at the sort of preferred land use pattern for the city looking, quite a ways out into the future. This does not match up exactly with zoning. It shouldn't match up it exactly with zoning, but it does need to sort of line up with how you would like to see the city develop and what kind of land uses and what kind of development patterns you would like to see in Cedar Springs, over the long term. Because you are largely a built out city for the most part, not entirely, but mostly. A lot of this stuff is pretty much just acknowledging what is already in existence, right? We're not obviously going to suggest that we take all of these single family neighborhoods and turn them into something else, because that doesn't make any sense. And there's a lot of other parts of the city, whether it's the downtown or the 425 area out near US 131, where the land use pattern there has largely been established. And so a lot of this is pretty much just kind of following along with what is currently there, but we did try to consolidate a little bit, compared to your zoning map or compared to previous future land use maps. Try to simplify this as much as we can. So you'll see that for the most part, most of the neighborhoods in Cedar Springs all kind of fall under the same low density residential future land use designation. That's pretty much your, traditional single family and, some two family here and there within the city, but that's sort of the main core neighborhoods of Cedar Springs, in addition to some of the newer developments on the north side of town. The medium density residential designation is reserved for your apartment complexes. So that's kind of what you see on the far east end of Oak Street. There are the two apartment complexes over there. There's Red Flannel Acres, and I'm not remembering the name of the other one. There is the White Creek Flats project, obviously over on the far west side of town, is in that same designation. And this sort of continues the, similar to what we have in zoning and similar to what you have on the existing future land use map right now. So we're just proposing sort of a continuation of that pattern. Similarly, the downtown largely follows your zoning map and the previous master plan. So the bright red that goes along Main Street from Muskegon up to Pine Street is your downtown designation, where we're looking for downtown style development. Buildings built up to the sidewalk, multi-stories, mixed uses, where possible, active storefronts along Main Street, although certainly not limited to just that. We also have a sort of general commercial, neighborhood commercial designation, which is what's shown in that later pink color. So that's reserved for smaller scale commercial development that isn't in a downtown style, but isn't also, the big box commercial that we have on 17 Mile near 131. So if you think about, there's a handful of businesses north of Pine Street. There's kind of a variety of things, right? There's auto dealers up there. There's some repair shops. There's some offices. There's a marijuana shop up there, perhaps. There's just kind of a bunch of different businesses up there. And it's largely sort of acknowledging the current pattern there. Same thing on the south side of town, near where the schools are. There's a handful of parcels that are largely commercial in use, and then on Muskegon Street, west of downtown, on the north side, there are a handful of small businesses there as well, and so we kind of want to acknowledge those. Because Muskegon Street is pretty busy, it didn't make sense to consider, at least to us, to consider having those revert back to a residential designation. But for those properties that are residential, largely to the west of the trail, again, we don't want to see a lot of strip commercial development in the core part of Cedar Springs there, so we had proposed to keep that residential on the west side of the trail. The high density residential designation is for the city's manufactured housing communities. Not proposing any changes there. The public / institutional use is for city parks, school properties, and that's pretty much it. Light industrial is for the industrial development in the city. And that's pretty much it. We showed the two proposed future road extensions on this map as well. A couple of areas that we did want to, have some discussion on with you, largely would revolve around those properties between the downtown and the trail. So there's some industrial uses back there that I'm not positive. I'm assuming anyways are kind of legacy industrial things that at one point in time, many years ago, relied on the railroad for business. Some of those businesses are still viable and operating, but one of the questions for you guys is do you see that as a viable long-term development pattern there that you would want to continue? Or alternatively, should we maybe show that transitioning back to residential? I don't really know the answer to that. We showed it as residential for now, but that's certainly something that I think would be worth a planning commission discussion about, because, obviously, we don't want to give the impression that we don't want businesses, or that the city is trying to discourage those businesses from continuing. That's not really the case, but if we're thinking long-term, what might be there in 2050, I'm not sure that industrial long-term makes sense. And if those industrial businesses were to close, what would we want those to be replaced with? Would it be more industrial, or would it potentially be transitioning into something else?
In my wildest imagination, I couldn't think those industrial areas would be turned back into residential. I just can't think of it other than if the buildings were torn down and made into apartment complexes, because the parking lots are huge. That would only be the only alternative.
Isn't the ground contaminated from industrial use, so you couldn't really turn it back into residential?
Don't know if, I'm not sure.
I wasn't sure that I'm not sure, but I was wondering if you knew, because
We're really only focusing on, there are a few, I mean, most of the bigger operations like Cedar Springs Manufacturing, that's on the west side of the trail. We're not proposing to change that.
side of the trail, right?
East side of the trail. Yep. And so it's kind of a weird, I mean, I'm just looking at the map here. So like Cedar Cycle is there.
The Cedar Cycle, right by Cedar Cycle is about 4 businesses right there. That's off of Ash.
Painting is there. I mean, I'm just looking on Google right now because I don't remember all of these.
Like off of Elm, I think, isn't the AT&T building right there? So what if we did, and I'm looking at my planning commission members, neighborhood commercial, something, like you have in the light pink there.
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely, again, this is really up to you. We're just kind of throwing some suggestions out there. And while we're talking about this, the other thing that I think we should be going over at the same time is the narrative. So each of those designations on the map, the low, medium, and high density residential, the highway commercial, and the downtown, all of these different designations, all of them have a corresponding narrative in the text that kind of describe what that is supposed to be. So for low density residential, for example, this is on page, I think, 11 of your packet. A couple of paragraphs to talk about of the neighborhood, overall density. So like for the low density residential, we say overall density is of 1 to 5 units per acre, consisting of single family homes, duplexes, or triplexes may be fitting. However, attention should be given to the overall design to ensure that design principles that give this designation its character and charm are preserved. So in each one of these, we have some text that describes what we envision that area to look like.
I mean, how active are those businesses back there? Do you have any idea if they're active,
K&A Painting is, AT&T, I mean,
like a routing building or something? Yeah,
Cedar Cycle, we know how busy they are. I mean, but didn't we designate right next to the trail as a certain type of?
I think we did that further down, closer to the heart of Cedar Springs.
We have the mill there and the hydro, whatever they do. Hydro something.
Hydro aluminum.
Cycle, I just see them like storing a bunch of boats there. That's about it when I've used White Pine Trail. Beyond that, I don't know if I've ever seen a motorcycle there. Maybe on the other side and I just don't see it, but yeah, usually I just see a bunch of old cars there and boats, so. Am I thinking the wrong?
guy that just stores cars there. He's got like
Oh.
a car hort. To the west of the trail, there is the Cedar Cycle.
Oh, I was looking on Google Earth just to make sure I could kind of look at that and then.
East of the trail.
And what you're talking about is Fifth and Cherry, where it used to be the sailboat place. Yeah, that, we don't know what they do there anymore.
It's a car hort.
Thanks,
That's
Rose.
wicked.
Thanks, Rose.
Well, it's his. He put all the cars on there he wants. This one,
Master plan, which was last updated in 2017, has that little kind of a triangular shaped area between Maple and Muskegon and the trail and Second Street is what it calls like a neighborhood mixed use, and it sort of allows for a little bit of everything. From a zoning perspective, it kind of works and it kind of doesn't obviously like it allows for those things there to be sort of conforming and consistent with the plan, but it also doesn't really provide a lot of, I guess, concrete direction because it just sort of allows for everything to just continue going as it has been, and maybe that's fine. But a lot of times, there are conflicts and concerns between some of these residential uses and some of the businesses that are there, whether it's, hours and noise and truck traffic and all of these kinds of things. So, one thing that we could do is put back the mixed use designation if you wanted to do that instead. Again, we're just kind of, as a first crack at this, we thought it might make sense to consider that transitioning back to commercial or to residential, excuse me.
Well, I want to read you this, like in neighborhood commercial, which is why I was thinking it. The part where it says, this plan does not envision any significant expansion in the existing general commercial uses in this corridor, but instead focuses on improvements to facilitate additional infill and or redevelopment opportunities. And I think that when I read that, I mean, that's what that looked like to me right there. I mean, we don't want to expand, but we do want, if a business was to go out, we want them to be able to make it better if they have to, or, keep up with it. I think I love that. Because we did have neighborhood businesses before, where the Speedway is by the car wash. And I think the car wash, that was considered a neighborhood business type designation. But I think I mean, yeah, because we don't want them to expand, but we want them to thrive. Looking at you guys.
So if we go neighborhood commercial and a developer buys K&A Painting, for example, tears it down, gets rid of the parking lot. Kind of residential there?
Well, if it was neighborhood commercial, they wouldn't be putting much residential in there at all. So that's the other thing so this is making me think maybe we do go back to that neighborhood mixed use from the old plan because there are, whether or not, we like it or it makes sense, there are a bunch of houses there. I mean, there are a bunch of people that live there. And so I don't want to designate that whole area to be commercial because then we potentially introduce a zoning issue there, right? So if the thought of the commission is that the businesses that are there, we want them to stay and to grow and to perpetuate and to thrive, then I'm thinking maybe, so we can certainly borrow some of this language and use it to describe this mixed use area and talk about how we don't want them getting big and pushing everybody out. But we're just gonna sort of bless what's there now and recognize that maybe it's not perfect, but we don't want to kick people out of their homes or have homes purchased for redevelopment either, or have homes converting into industrial, but I don't know how to word it exactly, but we can address that if that makes more sense to you guys.
Well, I'm just thinking, my mind goes to what do we want Cedar Springs to look like in 50 and 100 years, right? And I mean, it's not like we expect these places to close up shop in 6 months and move out, but what do we want our town to look like? I mean, do we want a vibrant hub downtown where we have houses that are around a downtown that people want to go down and walk Cause we've made our downtown more walkable. So that's where mine goes to, is I'd love to see that more residential. That way, the opportunity to attract families, and I would say, I would want it to be single family houses in my mind. So attracting single, like homeowners to come in to there and make this their home, as we become more of a bedroom community for Grand Rapids. I mean, people, that was Rockford. Now it's us. They're moving farther north because we're right off the highway and you can be downtown in 20 minutes. I mean, that was one of the selling points for you when I moved here. So that's where my brain goes, is let's have an opportunity for families to move in close to the downtown, have that nice area where families can grow and thrive while have the ability to walk to nice restaurants, a great theater when it's open, and some of the other amenities that we have. I mean, our summer concert series, all these things. That's where my brain goes, is I'd rather see that residential and grow that over the next 50, 100 years.
But where my brain goes is like where Miss Darla was talking, if the painting business, if somebody bought it and put a house up there, you're not gonna wanna live there if you still have the two businesses right across the street, plus there's industrial right over there. So like that corridor, you're not really gonna wanna live, you know. So that wouldn't,
But I think that's a conversation for another planning commission, and we gotta make some incremental changes here. And if we're making the change here, maybe the next change is saying, hey, we did make this residential. And maybe the change then is, hey, that didn't work out the way we thought, they gotta change it back, right? It's not something that's set in stone. This isn't the
Well,
10
that's-
Commandments. We can make changes as needed. Right? But I just think about the future use of what we want our town to look like. I mean, we need businesses here because people need jobs, right? But it'd be nice if we had those businesses more in like a business district rather than, 2 blocks from our downtown, right? And again, that's why I asked like, how vibrant are those businesses? Right? I mean, obviously, I know the painting company is, but I don't know, we want vibrancy in here. We want good,
right.
I mean, we want property owners that are taxpayers to help build our city. And we also want it to look good, right? And so I think if you put it in a spot that's gonna attract the people that we want to come and make this their home. Right, it's gonna take time, but that would be, to me, a step personally.
Where is the White Pine Trail? We set up something next to it. I think I just discussed this earlier. Oh,
Mhm.
believe so. And it does go through that same triangle. That's what I was thinking. Okay. Mhm.
Bike shop repairs, ATM stations. different types of businesses that would potentially remain on that.
You are correct. That's what I was thinking. That we did set it up that way to have businesses on the White Pine Trail. So I don't want to turn it back to residential. Because we've already, but with the mixed use, that means it can be residential or business. I would think that would be, a way to go.
There are residents in that district already, and if somebody wanted to move where where the painting business is, tear it down and build a house there, that would be their choice.
That's true.
And I mean, we can certainly write so if we draw a mixed use district designation in here, we can write the text so that it's not completely wide open to everything, right? We can say, we're going to allow for the continuation of these businesses for now. If they were to go out of business, we would want them to transition either into residential, whether it's, single family or maybe 2-family or townhouses or something, or alternatively, if commercial is viable, there's some sort of, trail oriented
Exactly. Going back to the White Pine Trail overlay.
and all of that. could also make sense. Cause the other thing that concerns me a little bit about commercial development in this area is that I don't wanna see, you know, a small building with, 75 private parking spaces around it either, because that's not really the character that makes sense for that particular location of the city.
And that's why I liked it, what it said there, what I read to in the neighborhood, where it said, no expansion, no big expansions, just small.
Okay, so we can make that revision for the next meeting. Um, probably the most significant area on here that we wanted to talk with you about, just because it's such a unique spot in the city. A couple other things, just I guess for your information that we did here. So, we didn't show any of the city's churches as public or institutional. This is just sort of just for your information. We generally show those as residential or whatever the surrounding zoning is, because if those were to, again, we're thinking long term, if those were going to turn into something else, typically want them to sort of revert back to whatever the surrounding neighborhood is. So that's how we have designated those. We show the extension of West Street and Cherry Street to 16 Mile and Wake Creek respectively. On the second page, we drew in the 425 area as best we could. And we basically just lifted the future land use designations right out of the existing plan for the 425 area and dropped them in here. This is largely just done for convenience. You don't have a zoning jurisdiction over a bunch of this, but if you do, it's helpful to know what that's planned for. So like when the apartments came in, when I first saw the application, I was like, well, this isn't in the master plan. What are we supposed to do with this? Because I didn't have a copy of the 425 plan at the time. So this is just kind of in there to help us understand the long-term plan for that area.
That's cool.
Otherwise, the rest of it's pretty consistent with existing patterns of development. Again, if there's anything in here that you think needs to be adjusted, or if you want to see additional commercial, multifamily, whatever types of development, or if you want to see a different type of development on that one large vacant parcel you have next to the Cedar Springs Mobile Estates property, now would be the time to talk about it and put it on there. Right now, it's designated low density. That makes sense because that's what you have outside of the city to the north and east. But you have apartments to the south and a manufactured housing community to the west. So you could certainly entertain a different type of residential development there too. But otherwise, we're just kind of here to kind of get your first impressions, and there will be many more opportunities for you to study this as we move forward. But
Residential. So your definition of the low density residential is not just single family. You can go into R2, two-family residential, potentially. I would like to see the low density be single family.
Oh, okay.
the reason why we wrote it that way is because almost all of the low density designation corresponds with that R1 zoning district. Are a few R2 properties in that same designation, and we're also trying to accommodate for these conversions that we know happen and have happened and continue to happen in your R1 district. So they're single family structures. They might have 2 units in them. But that's the reason why that we put it that way. We could certainly add some language that maybe emphasizes or states more strongly that the primary desire in the low density designation would be single family, if that's what the commission desires.
I would stand. I don't know about anybody else because, and we've went through this for God knows how long with multifamilies. Take a big old house and there's plenty of them over there and chop it up into 3-4 apartments. And there's no parking. It's just a mess. And, I think we kind of wanted to put a stop to that. That was our goal, I believe. And then if anybody is gonna do it, they have to get a permit. They can't just start chopping it up and say, well, by the way, we have 3 apartments in this house now, which happened.
Did that happen before zoning was this detailed?
We could have, I don't know.
You know,
I mean, yeah,
It just happened.
Nobody seems to know the answer to that. Cause we've run into that a couple times since I've been on the commission.
Happened.
and your zoning allows, I think, for the conversion of single family homes into two-family homes in your R1 zone. That's a permitted,
Admitted, yeah.
you could do that now, right? But yeah, I mean, some of them where they're divided into, 3 and 4 unit buildings isn't necessarily that some, those were done probably before zoning was,
Enforced.
might not have had zoning at that time, and someone just did it.
I think they got permission to chop up the houses, but they didn't consider parking and that sort of thing during all of that. But I would think if I bought a single family home for the extraordinary prices they're paying, I don't think I'd want a 3-plex next to me with 6, 7 cars and that was, really troubling for the folks that did have their single family homes.
Yeah.
To be in a single family home residential district and be surrounded by, I don't know, just absolutely surrounded by homes that were triplexes and fourplexes and
Yeah.
that was just something we tried to change for the quality of those traditional neighborhoods.
So I think to the low density designation, we can maybe emphasize that a little bit more and say like, this is primarily a single family area. If you want to do a conversion, that's something that needs to be carefully reviewed to make sure that you have adequate parking, you're not overcrowding and you're not clumping a bunch of these together. Because that's the other thing is that if you have, if it's one every other block, it's probably not that big of a deal. But if it's 5 of them right next to each other or on the same block, then it's a very different story. And that's when you have some of those problems.
And there are multiple family homes in this the Pilgrim Run. I think there's condos. I know there's condos. And there are areas for those, for somebody who wants to build a condo or duplex or triplex. There are those areas, and that's probably where they should be.
Are there any other questions or comments or suggestions or edits on any of the future land use categories?
I like the direction it's going in.
So from here, so we'll make some of these changes. We'll make the changes that you talked about. We'll update the map. We'll have that turned around for the next meeting so we'll probably have one more chapter to review next month. And then we'll probably be able to have a compiled, complete draft together for the.
Also, I think between Second and Third Streets, going north and south, had wasn't it mixed use? So you could have a home business in there.
I mean, yeah, he has that set as the neighborhood, commercial. Second and third.
We got Main Street, and then we got the commercial district. And then to the west of Second Street, I think we had that as a mixed use.
That's what we were discussing earlier, yes.
So they could put business in a home.
Yeah, so we could honestly, that mixed use that we were talking about earlier, I mean, we could extend that all the way down to Muskegon. Because there are some businesses that are there now on the north side of Muskegon Street between downtown and the trail. And then there's that little, what is it, like a beauty shop or something that's just on the opposite side of the trail. Yeah, so like all of those, I think, could probably fall into that same, potentially fall into that same category. If not, John, you seem a little iffy on that, on that idea.
I just, if we're able, and I know, I keep harping on this, if we're able to get that same language that I like in the neighborhood commercial into there, because like I said, it's real tight packed in there, and I just don't wanna, blow out a business or have a business, blow out their building and then like Matt says, I mean, have a business, he wants to see more houses, but if we have a business that goes in, tears down 3 houses to build, expand or parking lot, so I just want to make sure that we kind of keep it on the small side in there. Anything else?
That is it for me on the master plan for now. We'll have more for next meeting.
Yeah, April 17th is community night. And we thought we could,
Yes.
put some of this information on boards and have it at the high school for comments, public comment. Would we be in that public comment period? By then, or-
Yeah, but we'd be
Oh.
close enough that we could still do it.
Okay,
The public comment period would probably be after that, but the planning commission can still take that feedback and incorporate it into the draft. I think it would be a perfect opportunity to present the draft plan, and if we can get the whole thing done in front of you guys sooner, we will.
Okay.
But yeah, we're getting close to the end here, so I think we'll be
Cards that the people can just write a comment on it, put it in a box maybe, and
handful of different things for people to do. We'll often have, we'll probably have the future land use map shown. We'll have some comment cards. We might have some other sorts of exercises that show, maybe ask people their opinions on types of businesses or building forms or housing. I like housing topologies. I don't know. We haven't figured out those details yet, but we usually come up with 2 or 3 things for people to do to help us prioritize, and then we'll take that feedback, and that'll, at this point, I think that'll help us determine whether or not we're at least on the right track, or if we're adjustments either way.
okay. That sounds good. All right, so we will move on to, I bet Miss Darla is gonna tell us about a joint meeting here.
we tentatively scheduled this a year ago, so here we are again. Yes, joint meeting proposed at the Kent County Sheriff's Department again.
Yeah, that was a good meeting.
Yeah,
Have you sent them a reminder? Oh, good. Okay, that's great. Good. Okay, so put that on your calendars, March 25th at 7 PM at the Sheriff's Department. Ocean, open discussion for issues not on the agenda. Let's see, the calendar, I believe, I don't think there's any changes to it. No. It's there for us. And then Miss Darla, we have, I know I saw something in our emails about Vanderhyde.
and they submitted their parking lot proposal. So we will have a public hearing at the March regular meeting.
Great. I'm glad.
Yep.
All right, I guess we are off to staff comments. Back to Miss Darla.
Just wanted to share, I received 4 facade grant applications this week. So 3 of them are for storefronts, Baker Insurance, Red Flannel Festival redoing their roof line. Copies Plus is for a sign. They're gonna update their sign that's hanging out front there, and Chris Conflitti. So there's businesses investing and the DDA's helping them. The facade grant is 50-50 up to 10,000. DDL put in 5,000. The business puts in 5,000. Some of these are not that large, but good to see businesses updating their fronts and then the other thing I wanted to share is we put out an RFQ for design build companies to help us remodel the Rowland building to be the new City Hall DPW. We received 12 RFQs. That was a lot of information to go through. We narrowed it down to 3 companies that we interviewed yesterday. And we have chosen Construction Simplified and Post. I forgot the architect's name. Post Associate Architects. They'll be pairing together to help us design that space. Needs council approval February 13th. But I think they will do a fantastic job to help us make that building what we need it to be for City Hall and DPW. So very exciting.
Great.
Did they give us a bid then or?
Yeah, that's coming. Yeah, that's all I have.
Miss Becca, City Clerk. All right. Planning Commission members, anything to discuss?
Not I. I think things are going well.
I don't think we have a city council representative here.
Yeah.
I think we are on to Mr. Moore, report of the planning consultant.
Have anything further to add?
Okay, well, if we have no other discussions, I will adjourn us at 7:55.